Alright, here is the video tutorial for Layer Mask Practice 2.0. We're going to review some of the concepts from our previous formative and talk about a couple new concepts today. Creating a custom brush is one, and using varying intensities as we punch through these layer masks. So those will be the two things I want to see today. We're going to be creating a piece something like this, but you're going to want to start with this fallleaves.psd document at the bottom of the assignment. I'll go up and open a new copy. Okay. So let's take a look at what we have here. I've got 4 layers set up for you. I've got a text layer. I've got a left half of this document, a right half, and it was hard to tell that those were there because there's also a bottom layer of the original leaf texture. So you can see left half now, right half. So check out your layers, see what you got here. So we're going to review layer masks and how we can use them to set up strategic ways to reveal or make pixels disappear in our pieces. One of the first pieces in this one, however, is going to be to define a custom brush. So typically when we use our paintbrush, we go into the paintbrush selector here, and there's a few preset ones where we can just kind of select from the options in Photoshop. There's a really neat feature, however, to use an image, or a layer in this case, as a custom brush. We're actually going to start by just isolating this layer of text and starting by creating a custom brush. So this is going to be a piece that you will do in your summative that corresponds with these formatives. To define a brush preset, it's called. That's in the edit menu, and it's literally named what I just said. Define brush preset. So whatever is visible in your scene, you can define as a brush. So that's why we took away the leaves. Otherwise those would become part of our brush as well, and that would just be too much. We want to use this text box as kind of like a stamp. So we're going to define brush preset here, and then you will get a preview of what your brush will look like, which is predictably these letters arranged as they are on my scene here. And then we get to give it a name. So you can name it whatever you want. Custom brush, fall, I'm going to call mine. We'll select OK. So we'll talk about how we're going to be using that brush later, but that's going to be step 1, is getting that brush made. And now, when you go into your brush drop down here, underneath all of your brushes at the bottom of the list, perhaps you will have a new brush, which is called whatever you just saved it as. Awesome. So our text box has done its job. Let's bring back our layer 1 and layer 2 here. So we're going to apply a layer mask to each of these, left side and right side. One's going to be a white layer mask, one's going to be a black layer mask. So to add a white layer mask, default behavior, click Add Layer Mask. There's my white layer mask on the left side. On the right side, on layer 2, we're going to hold Option on our keyboard while we click Add Layer Mask, and that's going to temporarily hide away those pixels. So now we're ready to paint on these layer masks. In your last formative, you used a spatter brush tool to strategically reveal pixels in a picture of Gandalf. In this case, we're going to use our new brush preset in the shape of the word fall that we just defined in the first part of the video. So a couple things before you start painting: make sure your new custom brush is activated here. By default, its size should be the same size that your text box was. So I'm not going to change that, but you might have to. And then we're going to think about painting on these layer masks and not on the layers themselves. So double, triple check that you actually have the layer mask selected. Same as last time, we're going to paint with the opposite color as the layer mask. So this is a white layer mask. I'm going to paint with black. So as a reminder, you have your 2 colors here you can switch easily from. Set up one as black, set up one as white. And then you can flip back and forth with X or this little arrow. So I got my brush. I'm on the white layer mask, black brush. I punch through the layer mask with one click. Now what's cool about these layer masks is you can get kind of varying levels of your punch through. So what I mean by that is let's experiment with not painting with black, but let's go over to our color selector and move up this left side here to maybe a little darker shade of gray. So I'm like 1/4 of the way up this side. So because I'm still painting gray on a white layer mask, it's going to punch through still, but you'll notice that it's not fully cut through. It's got a little bit of opacity of those leaves still yet on it. If I move even further up towards a lighter gray in my color selector here, and kind of punch through to the left of that, you can see some pixels get punched through and some do not. Then if I bring this way up, not quite white because we'd get no effect, but a very light gray, you can see what happens. The behavior of your stamp, or your brush in this case, is to vary the opacity of your cuts here. So the closer you are to the color of your layer mask, the less of an effect you will get, and the more far away you are from the original color of the layer mask, the more extreme your effect will be. So as you might imagine, on the black layer mask here, I'm going to switch to layer 2's layer mask. Let's start with full white and make our first punch here. So it's going to reveal 100% of the pixels of the layer underneath. If I go down again to like a light gray here, 25% of the way down, as you might imagine, this will reveal about 75% of the pixels. So it kind of works in the opposite direction of the color scheme you're using here. Let's go to a darker gray, punch again. So I'd say about 25% of the pixels are visible. And let's get real close to black, but not quite. Very dark gray on a black layer mask is only going to give us a faint stamp here. Cool. So to be able to really make these pieces pop, I'm going to temporarily turn on layer 0 here, which will make everything seemingly disappear because it just kind of fills in all the gaps of our pixels because it's the original picture. But since that's underneath all our work, we could just use this layer 0 as a placeholder for, let's say, like a gradient we could throw down. And if I'm looking for colors that maybe would complement reds and oranges, maybe I'd go with, I don't know, something very plain and simple like a grays gradient here. And making sure I'm on layer 0, I can just kind of throw this gradient down on layer 0. It's going to replace that original leaves texture with my gradient, thus revealing all my work on top of it here. So your final output will look kind of something like this. So practice with, again, adding those layer masks and then how you can use them to varying intensities. Once you have something like this, it's a file export. I always recommend renaming your file so it does not replace your original file. Good luck.